So wholeness, from my perspective, has so much to do with the coming together, the integration of fragmented parts. So I remember the first time I heard the term fragmentation in terms of psychology. I thought, well, what is that? It makes a lot of sense when you start to think about it, right? Because as humans, our bodies look whole, our hair's in the right place, our arms are in the right place, that kind of thing. We're a whole self in terms of our physical body. But what about the psychological self? What does it mean to be whole? And I heard that term fragmentation, and I had a saw, like the splitting off, right? That when you think about being a kid in school and you learn about fragments, you see the little pie chart kind of thing, and a portion of it is gone. And so when I think about wholeness, I go back to that initial time when I heard that term fragmentation. And it brought to mind the pie chart and the taking away from the whole, right? The taking away from the whole. So when we think about wholeness, it's the coming back together of the whole. And from life model perspective, right, there are certain things that we all need in order to be whole. We call it the 5 to Thrive. 5 to Thrive is a few different aspects, 5 in fact, 5 different aspects of human existence that creates an ability to bring together the fragmentation into a whole, to integrate the parts. And it has so much to do with belonging. It's belonging to a community. Wholeness cannot be done outside of community. And as therapists, we really need to understand and know this, because there's only so much that we can actually do in our settings with our clients one-on-one. We need more than just the one-on-one to do these things. We need a group. Our clients need to belong somewhere, not just with us one-on-one, because as Life Model points out, the scientific research is that the 3+ bond, or the family bond, the communal, tribal connection, is the strongest bond that exists. So our brain is searching for that. Our brain wants to know that, wants to experience that. So when it comes to wholeness, the 5 to Thrive is 5 things. It's one, it's a place to belong. Right? That I have a place to belong in a high joy community, which is in our other episodes. If you want to kick back into some of those, you can learn more about high joy communities. But that's a community where the gentle protector brain is dominant, where the bullying can't happen, when the drama triangle isn't getting in the way of healthy adult to adult communication, and that the adults in the room, the gentle protector brains, can actually bring peace and harmony and love and joy, even in very complicated situations, that we have high capacity. So we need a place to belong, a high joy community, a place to give and receive, not just to give and not just to receive, but to do both in mutually satisfying ways, which there's so much just to that second point of the 5 to Thrive, because oftentimes we are good at one or the other, right? I see that so much in the groups that I facilitate, specifically the counseling groups that I'm facilitating. It's a very awkward thing a lot of times for women. I do women's groups. It's awkward for women to receive, because we oftentimes are so good at giving. We had the babies, we take care of the babies, we take care of the neighbor, we take care of our friends, we do all the things. But when it comes to somebody either giving us a compliment or giving us a gift or seeing something that we need and offering that to us, it's oftentimes not received without guilt and shame. It's like, oh, no, don't give that to me, or don't say that. That's not true, And we think of that as humble, and I'm better at giving than receiving. But there's something developmental that we need in our communities, in our belonging groups, in terms of being able to receive. And then others of us aren't good at giving. We receive, and we see that as well, like with all the entitlement in our world, in terms of, I got good at receiving because my parents did this, or I was able to because of my, service to the community, or my intelligence, because of my outward beauty. Like, I was used to receiving, but I'm not as good at giving. So to give and receive in mutual satisfying ways contributes to our wholeness. And we need to be able to do that. We need to know how to do that. And then there's the idea, the third point in the 5 to Thrive is to have a place to mature, to really grow up. And in order to do that, I need to be able to recover from my malfunctions, right? So actually the third one is to recover from my malfunctions, which is filling in my developmental gaps, like working at finding ways to fill in those areas that I didn't get what I needed as a kid. The traumas, trauma A life model calls trauma A the absence of good things, like neglect, right? Not getting the things I needed to get developmentally. And trauma B, the bad things that happened, the traumas, the things that were done to me that harmed me psychologically and possibly even physically. And so if I can recover from those malfunctions, I can grow in maturity. So 3 and 4 kind of go together, right? So I need to be able to recover from those malfunctions in my belonging group. It's not something that can be done in isolation. When we isolate and we just, I just need to be alone with my pets, or with only this one other person, or, it's not safe to connect really with people, then we aren't able to get to that point of truly healing those parts. And as a trauma therapist, I didn't know that for a long time, because here I am trying to do trauma therapy with clients thinking this is going to be enough. But at some point in my life model journey, I discovered, it's not enough. And I think when we look at the 12-step communities in our culture, we go, okay, this is why this has worked for so many years. Nobody's on staff. Nobody's getting paid. Those are volunteer-led, and they're working. I know it's not perfect, and I know there's some controversy about it, but it stood the test of time because it's belonging, and it is working at some level, or it wouldn't have survived this long. So that whole belonging piece of coming together with a high joy community in a way that helps me recover from my malfunctions, from my traumas, fill in the gaps in those areas, then leads me to be able to grow into maturity, right? And if I grow into maturity, I fill in the gaps of the younger years, because maturity is hierarchical. You can't identify as a true adult or a true parent or a true elder until those younger gaps are filled in from infancy to childhood. And Life Model does quote understanding that 75% of our culture is living in infant or child maturity. And that's staggering, right? That we're not even used to seeing what it looks like to be mature. And therapists aren't exempt from that. Church leaders aren't exempt for that. We act out of our eldership part, but oftentimes have these severe gaps underneath. And that's why at CFT Institute, we're all about personal and professional growth. Hey, look, if we can't get better personally, we're not going to be able to be better professionally. And that is our superpower. That is the secret sauce, to actually do our own work, to get our right brain healed so that we can offer that truly right brain psychotherapy, right? I think that's Dan Siegel's new book, one of his newer books. It's either Siegel or Shore, right? This right brain psychotherapy. We need to be whole enough and healed enough to be able to do this for our clients. We want to be mature elders. We want to be the real deal, right? We want to mature. And if we're going to do that, if we're going to become whole, we need a group too. We can't just do it on our own, and it can't be just a group we're leading. It has to be a group where we are mutually receiving and giving life. And the last thing that's really needed for wholeness, the last thing that we, is birthed out of this process in the 5 to Thrive is learning to know our own hearts. Who am I? What does it mean to be me? What is my true identity? I remember being a young therapist just out of grad school and working with a teenage girl. And I put the word identity on the board, and I was like, let's work on your identity. And while I was working on it, I was like, I don't know my identity. I don't know who I am. How can I help her know who she is if I don't know who? And it brought me, to this spiral of how does a human even figure that out? And that craving for understanding that started real early in my journey. And it wasn't until I found the life model that I really was grounded in the idea of what it means to find your identity, what it means to be yourself, and how to figure that out. And so I know that when I came across the information of I need a group in order to get this 5 to Thrive, which culminates in this true identity springing forth and being lived out on the earth, I had a couple of my therapist colleagues come to me and say, hey, we'd like to, spend some extra time with you. Two women came to me separately and said that I want to spend a little bit of extra time with you. And I said, hey, do you think you might be interested in doing an identity group with me? I'm hearing about this, I'm learning about this. And they said, sure. And now, 8 years later, here we are, still going strong in our little group. And it's been amazing and difficult and all the things, but the whole storming, norming, forming kind of thing that we talk about as therapists. Yet there's a sense that I've never known myself at this level before. I didn't really know who I was, and it's catapulted me into this ability then to take this into the other groups and help other groups get started and really be a champion for this concept, because we all need it. In fact, in one of the women's groups I had this week, one of the ladies said, we need to start a group for everyone. Everyone needs one of these. The teens are so hurting, and the men in our culture don't connect well outside of the 12-step usually. And, as women, we do it at some level, but then also oftentimes there's competition and there's hurt and pain going on in our female relationships. We say, two's company, three's a crowd. I can't be friends with more than one person at a time because our skills aren't there around it. And it's hard. And so wholeness is not easy, but it is possible when we're strategic and when we're willing to let our guard down and open ourselves up and get some education and inspiration and intentionality around doing this 5 to Thrive thing. It works. It's amazing. I highly suggest it for all therapists. And I'm so glad you listened in today.